Hi everyone, it's Elliott here, hope you're doing well. Thought I'd make a quick video today about my journey. As you can see behind me, I'm just out and about at Clapham Common today. We've got the field over there, we've got the lake there behind me as well. It's a lovely part of London, which I live very near to. It's one of the main green areas and spots in London. Got my coffee as well, which is nice. So yeah, I thought I'd just say a little bit about my journey. And firstly, I used to be stuck with chronic severe OCD, sexual orientation OCD, as you know by now, is my main theme. And I remember just living in terror from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep. And I'd be constantly scanning the environment for danger. With sexual orientation fears, you're surrounded by people of the same sex. And I remember I'd go around and I'd be looking at the ground like that. Constant anxiety, really graphic, intrusive thoughts that felt really real. It felt like I just completely lost who I was, and everything that I ever knew about myself was almost snatched away from me in a moment. I remember the day when my OCD latched and I was running around the football pitch, and I remember there was somebody on the pitch next to me, and I thought, well, you should find him attractive. And then bang, OCD locked in, and my life was never going to be the same again. And I was just pulled into the path of compulsions, just that chase for absolute certainty, but also that absolute terror that was just I was living from through the OCD, and my whole life I was just so anxious, worried, couldn't think about barely even the next task that I was going to do, just pumping anxiety throughout the body. It felt like I was wired to a fuse, and I was on a plane that was about to crash, and there was so much of that going on just 24/7, and it felt like torture. It felt like eternal hell, as we all know, and it felt very real as well. But it felt like I was always a moment away from my fear being realised, and I was just constantly on edge, and it took a toll on my body. I had lots of heart problems, stomach issues I had as well, panic attacks, nausea, had lots of gut issues that I'm still sort of repairing in many ways, but I'm a lot better. So it left my body in a really bad way, and I just thought, how would I ever get back to that baseline level of calm? I tried everything. I tried the hypnotherapy, I tried the CBT therapists, all these different things, and I just wasn't getting better. And I remember just thinking, I'm stuck, this is going to be me for the rest of my life. And it was hard. It was so tough. The effect that it had on my family, being constantly worried about me, the impact on my friends as well. My job prospects, I was churning through different jobs, I was signed off work, didn't think I'd have any prospects, wasn't able to really build anything. Avoidance of discomfort, because I was just so afraid all the time. I'd be living in my parents' house even though I probably could have moved out. Avoided my classes at university because I was so scared of being triggered. I found it so hard to even sit next to people in a lecture theatre because of the trigger being next to me. All these little things that I used to do. I used to not be able to look at pictures in my room of my favourite sports stars in case I got triggered. Other things as well, like even to the extreme of not liking a guy's picture on Instagram, because what if my friends, or what if people I knew saw me liking that photo and then they thought that I was gay? And it was constantly just living from that lens of fear, that misting glass, the lights being on but no one was at home. I'd be out and about with my friends, and all I could think about in the environment was whether my friends could see me looking at a guy and they think that I find them attractive, and that was all just going on, pumping away 24/7. And I remember, I had really bad sleep problems because of that. My body was just so hyper aroused, I found it really hard to sleep, and it felt really hopeless, and there was no way out. But I had to really work hard with the consistency, dropping my compulsions, dropping the avoidance behaviours, looking at what I was really scared of. Because our brain with OCD, the fear response is jacked up. The brain has learned to be scared of something, right? And as it locks on, it's almost very hard to see the wood from the trees, and you're so fused to that fear that you can't really see life without it, that you can't see past it. But as you break down those core fears, as you really chip away at that over a long period of time, the brain gradually learns to be less scared, all right? And with me, and with your theme that you're going through, more than likely there's more than one fear that's at play. So maybe in a sexual orientation OCD, it's a fear of living a lie, the fear of not knowing your true self, the actual fear of rejection as well. With an ROCD, it might also be similar. So fear of living a lie, fear of losing the relationship, fear of being unhappy, fear of being in the wrong relationship. So there's so many different fears that stem off that theme, and it's so important to chip away at all of those different themes over a long period of time, right? And that does take time. We hold these belief systems, we navigate through the world through these belief systems as we grow up, and these perspectives we've adopted and ingrained within ourselves in many ways over a long period of time. So it takes a little while to really shift that, looking at the belief systems and then behaviourally as well. That's why the exposure is so important. That's why dropping the compulsions are so important, to really help reinforce those beliefs that we have. All right, so there is hope. There really is hope for you. No matter where you are now, no matter how old you are, whatever position you're in, with the symptoms, there is so much hope. And it comes down to what we are scared of, right? How can I learn to be less scared? How can I bring down the catastrophized thinking? How could I see some positives if that worst case scenario was really to happen? What are the shoulds, oughts and musts that I'm holding? All right, and you need to relentlessly, not compulsively of course, but you need to break that down in a consistent format over a long period of time. And I know it feels so hard with the physical symptoms you might be going through. Even making it through the day could just be a chore. Like, it can feel so tough. I remember some days I just, the goal of the day was just to make it through the day, all right? Because you're running on empty, right? You're in the trenches. Your nervous system and body is screaming at you, especially when you stop the compulsion, especially with the anxiety. You're just going to be so honed in and dialed into how you feel there. It's going to feel impossible to almost think about anything else, do anything else. But those are the days where that real resilience and still is built. All you can do in those days is do the best you can not to add that secondary layer to the suffering, and just to really grind it out and grit your teeth and say, right, I'm really going to go through the fire here. And if I just make it through the day today, then that's a win. Your best on each day is going to look differently. Like I said, some days it's just going to be getting through the day. Some days it might be doing the exposure. Some days it might be, doing some good belief work. All right. So it's so important that no matter how you feel, you keep that consistency over a long period of time. And it's so key to remember to not always judge your journey based off of symptoms. Base your journey off how robust are my perspectives, how flexible are my perspectives. Can I really move towards acceptance of the worst case scenario? Yeah. How are my behaviours lining up to my belief systems? Am I avoiding? Am I confessing? Am I doing reassurance? All those different things that you need to really factor in and judge off of your journey. All right. And of course, there's going to be lots of compulsions going on. There's going to be hundreds of compulsions going on. Sneaky, subtle compulsions, internal compulsions, all ones like that. And those ones for me were very much the last ones to go. Like, I had to really look at the low-hanging fruit for me. So what was that? My main compulsions, adult content, and which was my main one. How can I cut that? How can I reduce that? Then I had lots of little compulsions, almost residual compulsions left. So that internal forcing of attraction when I was, looking at the sex, testing in my mind. So I had to really break down the belief systems, and that automatic process that was going on in my head started to dissipate as I got more comfortable with the rational beliefs and perspectives and the acceptance. All right. And then as well, I was left with fear of fear. So once my main fears and things was really addressed, I was left with this fear of fear, this chronic pumping anxiety that I thought I'd be stuck with forever. And it was just that relentless chase to get out of it. And I remember feeling so frustrated with every trigger that came by, because I remember thinking, oh, why am I anxious? How can I be rid of the anxiety? Why can't it go away? And I just remember those piercing sensations that would sometimes be there as I had to go about my day. And it was so hard to even get through the day at times, like I said. But all I could do in those moments was just truly allowing myself to feel the way that I would feel, without trying to change it, without trying to fix, without trying to solve. That's when we get into trouble, when we try and fix, when we try and solve, when we try and work out. There's nothing to fix or solve. There's nothing that we need to fix or solve. And I know that sounds hard to hear, but there isn't, because that stems us down to that puts us down the compulsive path of trying to get that right answer, of trying to achieve that internal state that we're after. OCD knows the internal state that we're trying to achieve. We put that on a pedestal in our mind, we try and chase that, and it always just feels just out of reach, and we think we're going to be able to force and manipulate that ideal internal state in our mind, but it doesn't work like that. We have to give up the resistance, we have to give up the control, because when we resist, when we fight, we reinforce to our brain that that's important. OCD is going to know that, and it's going to pull that away from us, in many areas of our life, whether it's a core fears, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's family. OCD knows what we hold dear, and it's going to go for that. So you have to try and be aware of the mechanisms in which it's going to try and operate and try and interject and intercept all of those things, right? So that is why acceptance and rational thinking is so important. It doesn't give that angle for OCD to grip, right? So Really think about that in your recovery journey. How am I being irrational? How am I holding those rigid shoulds and musts? How can I loosen those up a little bit? Remember, acceptance doesn't mean agreement. We don't necessarily want our worst case scenario to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to like it, but we can make peace with and come to terms with it even if it did happen. In most cases, if the worst case scenario did happen whilst you're alive and not dead, you could reshape your perspective around that worst case scenario if it was to happen, right? Your life wouldn't just end there. There'd be a horizon beyond that worst case scenario happening. And whilst we have that horizon there, we can reshape and remold our perspectives over that thing that we're scared of. So luckily enough, it's good to be aware of that, right? You know, our perspectives aren't final. We wasn't born with our perspectives, right? We can shape those over a long period of time, and whilst we're alive, we have the ability to do that. So think, is it really that bad? If the worst case scenario was to happen, would my life really be over? Would it really be awful? How could I adapt? How could I adjust to that and use my perspectives for me if it did happen? All right, so yeah, keep cracking on, day by day, consistent work. You can get there, you can recover. There is hope.